everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be tying up Lael Johnson's Nightcrawler Fly. So to start off, we've got an HMH small rigid tube, 40 millimeters. I cut that custom, and then 20 millimeters of tubing to slide over the end of that. One drop of super glue, start your thread right at the back, and then just capture that junction. Starting the fly with a Fusion Flame dubbing ball. Dubbing loop with wax around the dubbing. Spread it out to about 2 inches long, bend that up. Then collect any of the fibers that are still sticking out so that you have this nice tight roll up for your dubbing ball. 2 wraps and then go into the crevice that you created. Cool, great hot spot in the back of the fly. To add to that, we're gonna do a shoulder with yellow Arctic Fox. Take off about a ½ inch of that, trim the stuff at the bottom. So that goes in the dubbing loop with some dubbing wax. So tie it in offset so that the point at which you cut them is closer to the center line than the natural end. So now we're gonna spin that up. Wire brush, just to take out anything that was gonna come out anyway. Light in sparse, fold it all back one direction, and then wrap it right in front of the dubbing ball. If you've watched any of my tying videos, you know I'm a big proponent of not wrapping too many times. Just 4 or 5 times is fine. Tightly keep that body nice and small. So for this rear station, we're going to be working with yellow and orange ostrich plumes. Pretty long stuff, right? So we're talking 2.5, 3, 4-inch fibers on these. So we need 8 yellow and 8 orange. Start with yellow. We'll tie 2 fibers in. Capture it 3 times. It's directly on top of the fly. And now we are going to work clockwise, or whichever direction you want, 45 degrees apart. So we're going to turn it. We're going to put 2 directly on the side, so on until we get to the end of this. Each time not doing too many wraps as to prevent a big buildup of thread right in front of the prop, which we do not want. Right, so we've just worked all the way around 45-degree angles from each other, top, bottom, left, and right with the yellow. Now in the space that you've created in between of those, go in with your 2 strands of orange and do the same thing all the way around. On to the next spot. So again, just between the previous 2 yellows, turn, between the last 2 yellows goes to orange. All right, perfect. We've just finished that rear station. See, we've tied in orange and yellow all the way around. What we're gonna do is we are gonna tie in a piece of guinea. I'm gonna go with some red guinea. So I just took the fluffy stuff off the bottom. I pull back these fibers, and we're going to tie that in right in front of that rear station. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's plenty. We're just using 6/0 thread. Turn it back, put in 2 or 3 more. Now we're going to take these fibers and just pinch them forward, well, backwards really. Once you've pinched it back, go ahead and start to wrap it. Just tie that down and then trim away the stem. And I might brush things too much, to be honest, but I like to go in and just separate all the individual fibers of the guinea. All right, there's our rear station. Now we're gonna go ahead and tie in some flat braid. We're gonna be using French flat braid. I've got this pinkish one. Go ahead and go towards the front of the fly. Capture your braid. We're gonna be doing down and back on this fly. Just leave yourself 1/4 of an inch for the next station. We're just going to wrap that all the way back down and all the way forward. Go ahead and capture that. Now we're going to repeat the steps 1 and 2 of this fly, which is dubbing ball and then Arctic Fox shoulder. Now this time for the Arctic Fox, we're going to change things up and we're going to go for the pink. So I've just stretched out the Arctic Fox to lay down like that, and I'm actually going to tie in a composite loop. So here I've just got some white predator wrap. So I've got about 1.5 inches. I'm just going to cut that right off of the, so I create a dubbing loop and I throw some wax on that. Arctic Fox with the predator wrap laid over it, insert that right into the loop, and we're going to lay that 60-40. Come in with the wire brush. Now my goal when I'm doing this is to get the, thread that's running down the middle. You can kind of see how sparse or how thick something's going to do based on that. If I can get it all even so that it's as close to this thickness as I can, and it's just the fibers trapped in there, then I know that all of the fibers are actually fully extended and ready to be wrapped. Then wrap that up right in front of the dubbing ball. Fibers along the way that try and turn it, go to the wrong direction or something. Of course, go and pick it all out. You know the drill. In front of that, we're going to tie in our beautiful long red ostrich. And now with this ostrich in particular, feel free to select a color based on whatever ostrich you have that's long enough. My goal is that this is as long from this front station as the back of the fly. So with these, I'll actually be tying them in right at the point of their spines, 3 turns. So there's nothing left to trim. It's a cool kind of traditional steelhead fly hair wing style. Now on this front station, a little bit differently, because of the thickness of the marabou we're going to be laying over this, I like to keep these as kind of long legs, and I don't make the ostrich as thick as I do in the back. So we're going to stop there. We're not going to go fill in the spaces. Instead, we're just going to apply a few extra wraps so that they're nice and secure, and just ever so lightly kind of pull them apart, and that creates that nice open effect with nice long tentacly legs on it. I'm actually going to go in, I already have this exact fly tied up with a red marabou over it, so just for the sake of the demonstration, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to do a fuchsia, I guess you would call this fuchsia paint. Wrap it back 5-6 times. I like to twist up all the fibers up front in my finger, pull them back, capture them 3 times. Just take your time kind of pinching it, massaging it back. It'll loosen up those fibers and they'll all eventually point the same direction. First wrap will be almost directly on top of itself so that it's nice and snug up against that shoulder. And then we're going to work just barely in front of itself going forward now. Now we're going to capture that marabou stem and trim that with just a couple wraps. I did about 4 or 5. We're going to tie in some flash. I think this is called like a fire orange. 6 strands of whatever flash you want, really. And you're going to tie in those as long as the longest ostrich. Capture that down with some tight wraps. Pull the stuff that's facing forward back. Capture that down with some tight wraps. Separate it into a bit of a V shape once it's in there. Same thing on your side. We're going to take this and we're going to make it as long as the longest ostrich. We're going to capture it down. Pull it back at a slight V shape. Capture that down as well. Now, red grizzly saddle hackle. So instead of tying these in like wings, we have 2 up here. We're going to do 1 on each side. So we actually tie it in flat as long as the longest ostrich and the flash all the way to the back of the fly. Maybe like 2 big arms coming off the fly. It looks awesome. So we know the length. We're going to pull back the fibers in the front. Make sure when you tie this in, of course, you are tying it in so that you have nothing excess to trim. Nice and close up. 5 times. Pull the spine back, capture it with 3 wraps, and then trim that so you can't pull that feather out. So now we're going to do the same thing, but like I said, completely on the bottom of the fly. Opposite side, wherever you just tied on. Pull away the excess fibers. Just make sure you tie it in perfectly on the other side. So directly on bottom. Now on the spaces you've created between those 2 long hackles, we are going to tie in a jungle cockeye. Wrap it forward with 5, take the stem, capture it back with 3. Trim the fluffy stuff off the jungle cock. Come in, make sure it's the same length. Now we're going to be putting a ultrasonic disc in medium fluorescent pink on the front of this fly, but of course we need a whip finish before we do that. I'm going to apply some super glue to the thread and a little bit on the tube in front of the thread itself. Go ahead and push up your sonic disc. Then I like to just push that snug hard against the thread. Now it's not often that I tie on a tube and end up not needing to cut any off, but thankfully you were all here to witness a miracle today. End of the tube, just to do that final snug down, get it to seal around that sonic disc. So I wanted to discuss the rigging on this fly, so go ahead and run it onto your line like you would any tube fly. And now back here we're going to tie a perfection loop. Perfection loop should be about 3/4 of an inch, just as long as your junction tubing essentially. You're going to take whatever hook you would like. I'm going to run a size 1 aqua talon. We are going to rig that on just like a stinger hook. So we're essentially going to feed the loop through it and then pull the loop back over itself. Then essentially you want to pull that up inside of that junction tubing. That knot will sit in there, and that hook will be sitting right out of the back of the fly, just like that.